in the 60s. These are all adjusted for inflation. We were spending $60 per capita. In the 2000, we were spending $4. Percent of outlay, that's not going to... I'm putting these together so you have a complete presentation when you take your handouts, but we're going to get sustainability discussion. Look at what happens here. This is also telling you why the system is in such a big mess that we are now. The real capital outlay versus population growth. As the population started growing, we started going down in the real capital outlay in the United States, and these are California numbers. Imagine this. Who knows if we are spending more money today per capita in California, government in California, than when we were doing in the days of Ronald Reagan? Are we spending more or less per capita? Who says more, who says less? You shake your head.
I'm saying less.
We are spending less. So why do you have a problem? Imagine how much, okay, somebody's going to get this. What's the tuition you pay per year in Cal State Long Beach? Ballpark. You don't know how much tuition you pay? How much?
Per year?
Yeah, how much do you pay here a year?
Around 6,000.
6,000? Ah, you're paying too much. You are going to USC, they're charging 30,000. I'm kidding. Imagine that $6,000 is investment, right? You're investing in your future. What if you take $6,000 and go blow it in Las Vegas? You have still spend the same amount of money. I'm not saying that all our government expenditure these days are full of money, but money spent doesn't necessarily mean you're investing in your infrastructure or in your education or things that have long-term payoffs. So that has been what is happening. And you will see in the next slide, it shows it even more vividly. Look at this. This is the personal income. These are what your grandparents used to make. This is what your generation is going to be making. This is what your grandparents used to invest in terms of their income. This is what your generation is investing. So we are becoming a more affluent country, but we are not really spending a lot in terms of our system and all that. This is also telling, this is under President Bush and Clinton, this is the end of what we call the interstate era. This is when we started doing a hodgepodge of the federal programs. I'm not going to get into that a lot. This is what's the status of our infrastructure today. The status of our infrastructure, this, you guys should know which freeway is this one. Somebody's going to get a surprise. Which freeway is that one? What's that? Ah, you got it. There you go. That's a 710. 710 is the only freeway in the country that has 65% of its traffic is trucks. They come from the ports. We're going to talk about that. Can we maintain this? Look at this. It's a disaster. It's pathetic. This is the bridge that collapsed in Minnesota. These are our pavements. Our safety rates are horrible. We are killing about... How many people die in car accidents in the United States? Ballpark. Even if you come close, within 5,000, I'll give you a point, please. Ballpark, how many people die in car crashes in the United States every year? 33,000. That's equivalent to one 747 jumbo jet crashing every day. Well, look at this. 33,000. And Europe is doing a lot to improve. Japan is doing a lot. We're not. And California has started doing something. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability, which is the topic that Professor Toossi wanted me to share my perspectives and my experience, and most of us have been in California. You probably have heard this in your course before, Assembly Bill AB 32, which is a subject of big national and global debate. Who can, without looking at this, who can tell me what AB 32 tried to do? Anyone has heard AB 32 in this course before? You probably, either professor himself or other, his guest lecturers have told you. Who can tell me in one sentence or two or whatever you want, what is the goal of AB 32? What we tried to do back in 2006? Any volunteers? No? Yes? Yeah? I'm asking you.
Was that the one to cap CO2 emissions? And they used a cap and trade system to try to limit CO2 emissions and then decrease them in the years?
That's very true. We tried to say that, hey, we simply must do everything we can in our power to slow down global warming before it's too late. That's what Governor Schwarzenegger said when he signed AB 32. And the authors of the bill, Nunes and Senator Powley, I know both of them very good, and I worked with them on this issue. AB 32 pretty much establishes the world's first comprehensive program of regulatory market mechanism. See, that's the thing that I said at public-private too. We realized in the United States that the government really doesn't have a whole lot of control over a lot of the stuff that's happening. That these are private corporations, you have to have market-based solutions. And we had an experience before with the acid rain in the Northeast. It had worked, so we wanted to do it with the greenhouse gases. You guys are all way too young to remember the acid rains in the Northeast, but have you heard about it or read about it anywhere? It was so bad back east that your cars we pretty much had in some parts of the Northeast, back in the late 70s, early 80s, you had to repaint your car like every couple of years. Because whenever it rained, it was acid rain, because we had like these sulfuric gases all up in the atmosphere coming from all the industrial plants, and they were all dissolved in water and they would turn into sulfuric acid. And it would corrode the paint and it was a mess. And we cleaned it up through a similar process. Let me, without going through this, jump into this and see if we can talk a little bit. There was a recognition that we cannot sustain what we want to do. Let me actually show you this and then come back. The AB 32 started recognizing that the trends that I was showing you, the trends at 1.7% growth of greenhouse gases, we cannot sustain that. We are going to choke ourselves. We are just going to choke ourselves and it's going to be a disaster. So they said, okay, let's stop it and let's reduce it. Let's go back. Let's go back to at least what we had. Then in 2020, at least what we had in 2005, that we don't go any further up. So what they did was that, by they, I mean us, what we did was that we realized that you have to have a market-based approach because the government does not own anything here. The government of the United States at federal, state, and local doesn't really own anything. We own, for example, the highways, right? The roads that we travel. But who controls everything else? The cars and the energy supply and all that, they're private sector. So your government cannot come and say, hey, I'm going to send a directive, I'm going to send a memo, and I'm going to fix everything tomorrow. That doesn't work here. It might work in China, it might work in Sweden, it might work in Brazil. In the United States, it doesn't work. In Brazil, government owns most of the communication, production, and distribution system anyways. So they can do whatever the heck they want. Here, look at the Obamacare. I don't know, regardless of your political philosophy and your worldview, it took him like 18 months. It still is in limbo, and it's going to get challenged, it's going to get done or not. Democracy is very, very messy. We can't fix our problems quickly. We have to be patient, and we have to have a market-based approach. Otherwise, any policy initiative is going to fail. It's not going to go anywhere. So we realized that we have a limited supply of allowance that we call emission caps, and there is a demand for allowance, and then we give value to this, and there's economic incentive for market, for private sector, to actually reduce emissions. And what they did was that the California Air Resources Board, they came and they said, okay, we are the regulatory agency, which is CARB or ARB, depending on who you talk to. And they said, we are going to sell these emissions, and we are going to give credit to these companies. And these companies can decide either to reduce the emissions from their source, or they can trade between themselves. If this company does a better job, they can trade with the other company. This is what we call the cap and trade program. How many of you really have delved into cap and trade and really understand what's going on? Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
Well, we did, as a class, we did like a cap and trade fake. We each got like a fake business and we practiced like trading our permits and figuring out what we could actually earn and stuff.
Okay.
To try and get profit.
Okay, so you did actually like a microcosm of the bigger picture in a class setting, and you said, okay, I'm company A, you're company B, I'm going to get this much credit, I'm going to trade with you and all that. So did you win or lost?
Well, all the prices were too low for me to sell any of my permits.
Okay,
I
great.
ended up